The auditorium held 500 people, but I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Thorne stood on stage like a king addressing his subjects, the massive screen behind him glowing with quarterly numbers in bold blue and red. I sat in the front row, proud of what I'd accomplished this quarter. I'd closed the Vanguard deal, the biggest contract our company had seen in 5 years. I'd hit 115% of my target. I'd worked every single weekend for 3 months straight and missed my sister's engagement party. I'd sacrificed everything. I'd earned my spot in that room, and I'd earned the respect of everyone watching. "We missed our quarterly target by 12%, Thorne announced, his voice booming through the speakers mounted on every wall. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "And in this company, we own our failures. We don't hide from them." He clicked his remote. My face appeared on the 20-foot screen. Next to it, a graph plummeted downward in angry red ink. The text read in capital letters, MISSED quota, $2, 5 million. My stomach dropped to the floor. The numbers were wrong. They had to be wrong. This wasn't possible. Thorne pointed directly at me from the stage, his finger like an accusation. "Rena, stand up. Look at the team you let down. Look at every person in this room who worked hard while you failed us." I stood slowly, my legs shaking so badly I thought I might fall. 500 pairs of eyes burned into me. Some looked angry. Some looked disappointed. Some looked grateful it wasn't them up there. "Pack your desk," Thorne said coldly, his voice echoing through the silent room. "You're done here. Security will escort you out." I walked out of that auditorium in complete silence. No one spoke. No one moved. No one even breathed loudly. I heard the heavy door close behind me with a metallic click, and suddenly I could breathe again. My hands were trembling, but not from shame or embarrassment, from shock, from confusion, from the absolute certainty that something was terribly, horribly wrong with what had just happened. "My name is Rena. I'm a sales director, and I've always been good with numbers, really good. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't have agendas or personal grudges. Numbers are pure truth. People lie. People manipulate. People destroy each other for personal gain. But numbers are honest." 6 months ago, Thorne had called me the future of this company when I closed the Vanguard deal. He'd popped champagne in his renovated office and talked excitedly about promoting me to vice president by the end of the year. He'd told everyone at the leadership meeting that I was the reason we'd have a record-breaking year. He'd made me feel invincible. But I'd started noticing things that didn't add up. Thorne had renovated his office with expensive marble floors imported from Italy. He'd leased a private jet for business travel, even though we'd never needed one before. He was spending money like the company was printing it in the basement, and I'd heard whispers in the hallways that the board was watching him closely, waiting for him to prove the profits justified his extravagant spending habits. Now I understood everything. He needed a scapegoat. He needed someone to blame, and he'd chosen me. 3 months ago, Thorne had called me into his newly renovated office with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. He'd raised my quota to a number I'd never seen before in my entire career. When I'd stared at the paper in complete disbelief, unable to process what I was seeing, he just smiled that charming smile of his. "It's a stretch goal, Rena. I know you can do it. You're my star performer. If anyone can hit this number, it's you." I'd stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I worked every single weekend without exception. I called clients at midnight when they were in different time zones. I ate lunch at my desk and dinner in my car between appointments. My sister had begged me to come to her engagement party, crying on the phone about how much it meant to her, but I'd sent flowers instead with an apology card. I was chasing that impossible number like my entire life depended on it. 2 days before the quarter ended, I'd closed the final deal I needed. I'd sat in my office at 2 in the morning, exhausted beyond words, watching the signed contracts upload to the CRM system one by one. The screen had flashed bright green with confetti animation. 115% of goal achieved. I'd cried with relief right there at my desk. I'd called my sister and promised to make everything up to her. I'd gone home and slept for 12 hours straight for the first time in months. I'd hit the number. I knew I had. The system had confirmed it. The math was perfect. The night before the all-hands meeting, I'd logged into my dashboard to check everything one last time. I wanted to see that beautiful green number again. I wanted to screenshot it and frame it and put it on my wall as proof that impossible goals could be achieved through pure determination. But the number had changed. It said 88%, nearly 30% lower than what I'd seen just 2 days ago. I'd scrolled frantically through my list of deals, my heart racing faster with each click. Most of them were still there. The smaller contracts, the medium-sized accounts, they were all properly recorded. But the Vanguard deal, the massive $2.5 million contract that had saved my entire quarter and pushed me over the goal line, was completely missing from my dashboard. I'd called Eulalie immediately, not even caring that it was almost midnight. She was the VP of operations, the person who managed all the deal approvals and revenue recognition. We had lunch together every Tuesday at the Italian place down the street. She'd been my friend for 2 years. I'd trusted her completely. "Oh, Rena," she'd said, her voice tight and strange in a way I'd never heard before. "Legal flagged a compliance issue with the Vanguard contract. We had to push the revenue recognition to next quarter for audit purposes. I'm so sorry. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it." I'd argued with her for 20 minutes. I'd explained that the deal was completely clean, that legal had already approved every single page of the contract 3 weeks ago. But she'd kept saying she had to go, that she couldn't talk about it, and finally she'd just hung up on me. I'd assumed it was a clerical error, a computer glitch, a mistake that would be fixed in the morning. I'd never imagined it was deliberate sabotage orchestrated from the very top. I walked to my desk in a complete daze, my mind spinning with confusion and disbelief. My access badge beeped angrily and flashed red when I tried to scan it at the security turnstile. A security guard I'd known for years was already waiting at my desk with an empty cardboard box in his hands. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Your laptop's already been collected by it," he said apologetically, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Thorn wants you off the premises in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, Rena, I really am." 10 minutes. To pack up 3 years of my life, 3 years of late nights and sacrifices and victories. I grabbed my personal items as quickly as I could with shaking hands. Photos of my sister and my parents. A coffee mug my mom had given me for my birthday. And my physical notebook, the leather-bound ledger where I kept handwritten records of absolutely every deal I'd ever closed. Dates, times, client names, confirmation codes, email timestamps. I trusted pen and paper more than any computer software. I'd learned that valuable lesson from my father, who'd been an accountant for 40 years. The security guard walked me to the elevator in uncomfortable silence. As the doors slowly closed, I saw my former colleagues peeking over their cubicle walls, watching me leave like I was a criminal being arrested. Some looked genuinely sorry. Most looked terrified. They were wondering if they'd be next on Thorn's chopping block. I went home and sat on my couch for 3 hours, staring at absolutely nothing. My phone kept buzzing constantly with notifications, but I couldn't make myself look at it. I couldn't process anything. Finally, I forced myself to check. LinkedIn was absolutely exploding with activity. Thorn had posted something deliberately vague about accountability and making tough decisions, and trimming the fat to build a leaner, stronger team. He'd made it sound like firing me had been a difficult but necessary decision for the good of the company. My inbox was completely full of messages from recruiters, but when I started reading them carefully, my heart sank lower with each one. They were all extremely polite rejections. Companies I'd interviewed with just last month were suddenly moving in a different direction. Recruiters who'd been practically begging me to consider their clients were now completely ghosting me. Thorn hadn't just fired me publicly. He'd poisoned the entire well. He'd systematically branded me as incompetent and unreliable to protect his own reputation and cover his tracks. I realized then, sitting alone in my dark apartment, that he'd planned every single detail of this carefully. The public humiliation in front of 500 people, the immediate termination without any warning, the carefully worded social media post. He'd made absolutely sure I couldn't fight back, that I'd be too destroyed and broke to challenge him. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I sat on my living room floor with my leather notebook open, and the official quarterly report Thorne had released to shareholders spread out around me. I started doing math, cross-referencing numbers, checking dates and timestamps, building spreadsheets. Something didn't add up at all. If the Vanguard deal had truly been pushed to next quarter for legitimate compliance reasons, the company's total revenue should be significantly lower than originally projected. There should be a massive gap in the numbers that would be immediately obvious to anyone looking. But according to the quarterly report published on the company website, the revenue was exactly what it should be if my deal had actually counted toward this quarter's results. The money was definitely there in the bank, but the credit for bringing in that money wasn't assigned to me anymore. It was assigned to something vague called a house account. I traced the numbers backward through my notes, following the paper trail. The deal had been properly recorded in the system. The money had been deposited into the company bank account. But somewhere between my CRM system dashboard and the official financial reports sent to shareholders, the attribution had mysteriously changed. Thorne had stolen my commission and my credit. He'd taken my work and made it look like his success to make his numbers appear good to the board. And he deliberately destroyed my career and reputation to cover up what he'd done. I needed concrete proof. My handwritten notebook wasn't enough evidence. It was just my word against his, and he had all the power and money and connections. I went to the coffee shop directly across the street from the office, hoping to run into someone I knew and trusted. Most of my former colleagues walked right past without even looking at me. A few gave me quick, sympathetic glances, but didn't dare stop to talk. Then Osric sat down at the small table directly behind me. He was a junior IT analyst, quiet and incredibly shy. We'd never really talked much during my time at the company, but he'd always seemed genuinely kind. He didn't look directly at me. He spoke very quietly into his coffee cup, like he was just talking to himself about nothing important. The Vanguard deal wasn't actually flagged by legal at all. I checked the system logs myself. The timestamp on the edit was exactly 11:59 p.m. on the 30th. It was authorized by an admin key. My heart started racing so fast I thought it might explode. I kept my voice as low as possible. Who has access to the admin key? Only 2 people in the entire company, Thorne and Eulalie, nobody else. The betrayal hit me like a physical punch to the stomach. Eulalie had actively done this. My friend, the person I had lunch with every single week, had helped destroy my entire life. Osric stood up slowly and walked past my table without looking at me. He dropped a crumpled napkin as he left. On it was written a string of numbers, a transaction ID that would prove everything. I applied for unemployment benefits that same afternoon. I needed the money desperately. My savings wouldn't last more than 2 months in this expensive city. 3 days later, I received an official denial letter in the mail. Thorne was actively contesting my claim. He'd told the unemployment office that I'd been fired specifically for serious performance issues and failure to meet basic job requirements. This was the absolute final straw. He wasn't just satisfied with ruining my professional reputation. He was deliberately trying to starve me out financially so I couldn't possibly afford to fight back legally. Most people in my situation would have immediately hired an expensive lawyer. But lawsuits take years to resolve and cost tens of thousands of dollars I didn't have. I needed something much faster, something that would force the truth into the open immediately and publicly. That's when I remembered the external audit. Every single year, the company brought in an outside firm to independently review the financial books. They were scheduled to arrive in exactly 2 weeks. I started writing carefully. Not an angry email or a desperate emotional plea. A technical, detailed, professional whistleblower complaint. I addressed it to both the SEC and the audit firm directly. I didn't sound angry or vengeful in my carefully crafted complaint. I sounded curious, professional, analytical. like someone who'd simply noticed an interesting discrepancy in the numbers and wanted official clarification from the appropriate authorities. I included the specific transaction ID Osric had risked his job to give me. I asked one simple, direct question. Why does the CRM system data for this specific transaction directly conflict with the bank deposit timestamp and the official shareholder report? I attached clear screenshots from my personal notebook. I included exact dates and precise times. I made it completely impossible for anyone to ignore or dismiss. Then I sent it anonymously through an encrypted email service. I didn't want any credit or recognition. I just wanted the truth to come out into the open where everyone could see it. 2 days later, I heard through a former colleague who still trusted me that the auditors had arrived at the office completely unannounced and several days early. They'd shown up demanding immediate access to all financial systems. Thorne had apparently tried to charm them with his usual tactics. He'd offered them expensive lunch reservations and premium theater tickets, but the lead auditor had been absolutely ice cold and completely professional. We received a detailed tip regarding serious revenue recognition irregularities, she'd said flatly. According to my source, Thorne's face had gone completely white. He'd looked straight at Eulalie with pure panic in his eyes. Osric messaged me through a secure encrypted app. Eulalie's absolutely panicking. She's trying to delete files from the database right now. I'm watching it happen in real time. My stomach turned with fear. If she successfully deleted all the evidence, I had absolutely nothing to prove my case. But then Osric sent another message almost immediately. Don't worry at all. I initiated a shadow copy protocol an hour ago. Every single file she deletes gets automatically saved before it's permanently erased. She has no idea it's happening. Osric was an absolute genius. Eulalie thought she was cleverly covering her tracks and destroying evidence, but she was actually creating a perfect, undeniable record of her crimes and her guilt. The auditors are officially requesting access to the complete admin logs, Osric wrote. Thorne's completely losing it. I've never seen him like this. I sat back and waited patiently. I'd carefully set everything in motion. Now I just had to let it play out exactly as it needed to. That afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was Thorne. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I quickly hit record on my phone's voice memo app before I picked up. Rena, Thorne said, his voice suddenly smooth and friendly like nothing had happened. I think there was a serious misunderstanding. Let's talk about this like adults. Thorne's voice oozed false warmth and fake concern. I'm willing to offer you a very generous severance package. 6 months full pay. That's extremely generous considering everything. But I need you to sign a simple statement saying you made an honest error with the Vanguard paperwork, just a formality to close this out. He desperately wanted me to confess, to take all the blame, so he could show the auditors it was just innocent human error instead of deliberate fraud. I didn't mess up the paperwork, Thorne, I said as calmly as I could manage. And I don't want your money. I want my name and my reputation back. There was a very long pause on the line. You're making a serious mistake, Rena. You have no idea what you're doing. No, I said firmly. You made the mistake, and now everyone's going to know. I hung up and immediately saved the recording to 3 different secure locations. Another crucial piece of evidence. 3 days later, I received a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, incredibly crisp and professional. Ms. Rena, this is Winslow. I'm the chairwoman of the board of directors. I'd like you to attend a special emergency meeting tomorrow at exactly 2 p.m. The auditors have specifically requested your presence. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I'll absolutely be there. Good, Winslow said. Bring all of your documentation with you. I wore the exact same suit I'd worn the day Thorne publicly fired me. I wanted him to remember that specific moment. I wanted him to see exactly who he'd so badly underestimated. The boardroom was on the top floor, all floor-to-ceiling glass walls and incredibly expensive furniture. Through the massive windows, I could see the entire city sprawled out below. It was beautiful, cold, perfect, exactly like Thorne himself. When I walked in, Thorne and Eulalie were already seated at the long table. They'd prepared a professional presentation. I could see the title slide on the projector screen: System Error Analysis and Resolution. They were planning to blame everything on a convenient computer glitch. Winslow sat at the head of the table. She was in her 60s, with steel-gray hair cut short and sharp eyes that missed absolutely nothing. The auditors sat along one side of the table, their faces completely neutral and professional. Thorne stood up abruptly when I entered. "Winslow, this is completely inappropriate. Rena is a disgruntled ex-employee. She's trying to sabotage us out of spite." Winslow held up one hand firmly. "Sit down, Thorne, now." She looked at me with those sharp eyes. "Ms. Rena, the floor is yours." I opened my laptop with completely steady hands. Osric had sent me everything I needed. The shadow copies, the complete admin logs, all the deleted files, everything organized perfectly and clearly labeled. "This is the Vanguard deal," I said, projecting the first document onto the large screen. "I closed it on the 29th at 3 p.m. Here's the signed contract with the exact timestamp. Here's the CRM confirmation showing 115% of goal achieved." I clicked to the next slide. Here's what happened next. At exactly 11:59 p.m. on the 30th, someone with admin access moved the entire deal to a ghost account. The credit was completely reassigned to house revenue. Thorne jumped up suddenly. "That was clearly Eulalie. She manages all operations. She must have made a mistake in the system." He threw her under the bus without any hesitation whatsoever. I saw the exact moment Eulalie's face changed. The loyalty died in her eyes instantly. I clicked again calmly. "Actually, the edit wasn't made from Eulalie's work computer at all. Look carefully at the IP address." I let that information sit for a long moment. Then I showed them the complete trace. "This specific IP address belongs to the private Wi-Fi network on your personal jet, Thorne. The exact same jet you flew to Vegas that night for your business meeting." The room went absolutely silent. The auditors were nodding slowly, making detailed notes. The data was completely irrefutable. Thorne's face turned dark purple. "I was managing cash flow. It was a strategic decision to smooth out the quarterly variance for the board." "It was fraud," Winslow said quietly, her voice like ice. "You deliberately altered financial records to trigger your performance bonus, and you destroyed a top performer's career to hide what you'd done." Eulalie stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly. She was crying. "He told me to do it. He said if I didn't help him hide the revenue, he'd fire me exactly like he fired the last VP who questioned him." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I have all the texts, every single one of them." She started reading them aloud. Thorne ordering her to make the Vanguard deal disappear immediately. Thorne promising to protect her if she cooperated fully. Thorne explicitly threatening her job if she told anyone what was happening. Each message was another nail in his coffin. Winslow didn't even look at Thorne. She pressed the intercom button on the conference phone. "Security to the boardroom, immediately." Thorne stood up so fast his leather chair fell backward with a crash. "You can't do this to me. I built this quarter. I made this company profitable." "You faked this quarter," Winslow corrected coldly. Her voice was pure ice. "You committed fraud. You destroyed our best sales director's reputation to cover your crimes, and you nearly tanked our audit." The security guards arrived quickly, 2 of them professional and silent. "Escort Mr. Thorne from the building immediately," Winslow said. "His access is revoked effective right now." They flanked him on both sides. Thorne looked around the room wildly, like he was expecting someone to defend him. No one moved. No one spoke. As they walked him toward the door, he looked directly at me. "This isn't over, Rena." "Yes," I said quietly but firmly. "It is." I watched through the glass walls as they walked Thorne through the main office. Employees stood up from their desks all over the floor, staring in complete shock. Some pulled out their phones to record. By the time he reached the elevator, absolutely everyone knew what was happening. The CEO was being escorted out, just like he'd done to me in front of 500 people. The boardroom door closed. Winslow turned to me. "We need to restate our earnings immediately. Fix all the records. The auditors will help, but we need someone who knows the real numbers, someone we can trust completely." She slid a formal contract across the polished table to me. I looked down at it. The title made my breath catch in my throat: Chief Revenue Officer. "Director was too small for you anyway," Winslow said. "We need someone who won't look the other way, someone who fights for the truth no matter what." I picked up the contract carefully. My hands weren't shaking anymore. "I have 2 conditions," I said. Winslow leaned back in her chair. "Name them." 1. Osric leads a new data security team. He's the one who caught this. He deserves full recognition and promotion. Winslow nodded immediately. "Done. What's the second condition?" My picture goes back up on that screen in the auditorium, with the real number, 115%. I want everyone to see the truth. A small smile crossed Winslow's face. "I can definitely arrange that." I signed the contract. My hand was completely steady. Everything I'd lost was coming back, and so much more. The auditors stayed for another full week. They found 6 other deals Thorne had deliberately manipulated over the past year. Millions of dollars hidden in various ghost accounts. Bonuses he'd paid himself that he'd never legitimately earned. Eulalie cooperated fully with the investigation. In exchange for her complete testimony, she received immunity from prosecution. She resigned immediately and left the industry entirely. I never saw her again. Thorne wasn't so lucky. The SEC opened a formal investigation. Criminal charges were filed. The last I heard, he was facing 10 years in prison for fraud. 3 weeks later, I stood on the stage in the auditorium. The exact same stage where Thorne had humiliated me in front of 500 people. 500 employees filled the seats again. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up brightly. My face appeared next to a graph shooting upward in bright green. The text read, "Vanguard deal, plus $2.5 million. EXCEDD target, 115%. The crowd absolutely erupted. People were standing, cheering, clapping so loudly. Some were actually crying. They weren't just celebrating me. They were celebrating justice finally being served. I let the applause die down slowly. Then I started talking about the new quarter, the new strict policies, the new transparency standards we were implementing immediately. Osric sat in the front row, grinning proudly. He'd already hired 3 brilliant people for his team. After the meeting, people lined up to shake my hand. Former colleagues apologized for not speaking up. Junior employees asked for career advice. Someone started a slow clap when I walked through the hallway. I went back to my new office, the corner office with windows overlooking the entire city, and closed the door. I sat at my desk and allowed myself one quiet moment. I'd lost everything, and I'd fought to get it back. Not with anger or revenge, but with truth, with numbers that didn't lie, with evidence that couldn't be disputed. Thorne had made one fatal mistake. He'd challenged a mathematician to a numbers game. And numbers, unlike people, always tell the truth. I opened my laptop and got back to work. There was a company to rebuild, a team to lead, a future to create. And this time, I was in control. 6 months passed quickly. The company's reputation recovered faster than anyone expected. We implemented comprehensive new checks and balances throughout every department. Every single deal now required 3 levels of approval. The admin keys were distributed across 5 different people instead of 2. Osric built a sophisticated system that automatically flagged any unusual changes to revenue records. I hired 12 new sales directors. I made absolutely sure they understood that integrity mattered more than numbers. That shortcuts always have consequences. That doing the right thing, even when it's incredibly hard, is the only way to build something lasting. My sister got married in the spring. I was her maid of honor. I gave a toast about second chances and never giving up. She cried and hugged me and told me she was proud of me. My mother framed the picture of me on that screen with the green numbers. She hung it in her living room. Every time I visit, she points to it and tells the story to whoever will listen. Winslow retired at the end of the year. At her farewell party, she pulled me aside. "I almost missed it," she admitted quietly. "If you hadn't filed that complaint, Thorne would have gotten away with it. The board would have kept him on. He would have destroyed this company from the inside." "Why did you believe me?" I asked. "You didn't know me at all." "I didn't need to know you," she said. "I knew the numbers, and the numbers told me someone was lying. When I saw your documentation, I knew it wasn't you." She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was her business card holder, a beautiful antique piece made of silver. "You're going to be on a lot of boards someday," she said. "You'll need this." I hugged her tightly. She'd given me more than a second chance. She'd shown me what real leadership looked like. A year after I was fired, I received an email from a young woman named Kira. She'd just been publicly blamed for a mistake she didn't make. Her boss was trying to force her out. "I read your story," she wrote. "Everyone in my industry knows what happened to you. Can you tell me what to do?" I called her that same day. I walked her through everything. Document everything meticulously. Save all your evidence. Don't sign anything without reading it carefully. Find your OSRIC, the person who will stand up for the truth. File complaints with the right authorities. Be patient. Be strategic. 3 months later, she sent me an update. Her company had opened an investigation. Her boss had been suspended. The truth was coming out. "Thank you," she wrote. "You gave me hope." That's when I realized my story wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone who'd been blamed for someone else's crimes. Everyone who'd been silenced by power. Everyone who'd been told to accept injustice. I started speaking at conferences. At first, I talked about sales strategies and revenue management. But people kept asking about Thorne, about how I survived, about how I fought back. So I changed my speech. I talked about documentation, about staying calm under pressure, about the difference between revenge and justice, about how the truth always wins if you're patient enough to let it unfold. After one conference, a man in his 50s approached me. He was crying. "I was fired 20 years ago," he said. "My boss blamed me for his mistakes. I never fought back. I just accepted it and moved on. Hearing your story made me realize I should have tried." I held his hand. "You survived. That's what matters. Sometimes surviving is enough." But I also thought about all the people who didn't survive, who gave up, who believed the lies told about them, who let shame silence them. I promised myself I would keep telling my story, as many times as it took, until everyone knew they had the right to fight back. 2 years after everything happened, I was invited to testify before Congress. They were drafting new corporate accountability laws. They wanted to hear from someone who'd experienced retaliation firsthand. I sat at a table facing dozens of senators and representatives. Cameras surrounded me. My testimony would be broadcast across the country. I told them everything: the manipulation, the public humiliation, the attempt to starve me into silence, and I told them how I'd won, not because I was special, but because I had evidence, because the system, despite its flaws, still worked when people had proof. "We need stronger protections for whistleblowers," I said. "We need faster audit processes. We need consequences for executives who destroy employees' lives to cover their crimes." The laws passed 6 months later. They were called the Corporate Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. In the news articles, they mentioned my story. They called me an advocate, a voice for change. But I was just someone who'd refused to accept injustice, someone who'd trusted math more than power. Today, I'm still the chief revenue officer. The company is thriving. We've had 8 straight quarters of legitimate growth. No ghost accounts. No manipulated numbers, just hard work and honest reporting. Osric is now the Chief Information Security Officer. He's built one of the most sophisticated fraud detection systems in the industry. Other companies hire him as a consultant. I think about Thorne sometimes. He's serving his sentence at a minimum security facility. He'll be out in a few years. I wonder if he's learned anything. I wonder if he regrets his choices. Mostly, though, I think about that moment on the stage, when he pointed at me and destroyed my reputation in front of 500 people, when he thought he'd won. He'd underestimated me. He'd assumed I would disappear quietly. He'd believed his power made him untouchable. But power without integrity is just a house of cards, and I'd been patient enough to watch it fall. My name is Rena. I'm a chief revenue officer, and I'm proof that the truth is worth fighting for. No matter how long it takes. No matter how hard it gets. The truth always wins.